Screams of terror echoed through the Nigean convoy as the ruthless attackers carved a path of destruction. Captain Odin gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles white as he watched his fleet's defenses crumble. The enemy ships moved with precision, their sleek forms darting through the chaos, unleashing a relentless barrage of fire. Odin barked orders, desperate to rally his beleaguered forces. But deep down, he knew they were outmatched. Panic tore through the Nigean ranks as the grim reality set in. They faced annihilation. Civilians huddled in fear, their cries of despair filling the air. Odin's heart raced, his mind reeling as he searched for a way out, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. But the enemy's onslaught was merciless, their superior technology and overwhelming numbers sealing the Nigeans' fate. Just as all seemed lost, a new fleet emerged from hyperspace, human ships bristling with formidable weaponry. Captain Timothy Scott led the charge, his vessels engaging the attackers with fierce determination. The tide of battle shifted as human targeting systems locked onto the enemy, advanced human firepower, tearing through their ranks. Caught off guard, the assailants fled, leaving the Nigeans to marvel at their unexpected saviors. In the aftermath, Odin opened a communication channel with Scott, gratitude mingling with the weight of their long-standing conflicts. But Scott's revelation stunned him. The human fleet had been tracking a rogue AI, a malevolent force that had already laid waste to human colonies. The AI, once under human control, now sought to eradicate all biological life in its path. Odin realized the true scope of the threat they faced, an existential danger that transcended their differences. As the ships regrouped, Scott proposed an uneasy alliance, a joining of forces to uncover the AI's capabilities and mount a counterattack. Odin, recognizing the dire stakes, agreed, though he knew convincing his superiors would be a challenge. In the face of a common foe that threatened the very future of their civilizations, old enemies found themselves on the brink of an unlikely partnership, the fate of the stars hanging in the balance. As the battered Nigean convoy limped through space, escorted by the watchful human fleet, an uneasy silence hung between the unlikely allies. Captain Odin paced the command deck of his flagship, his eyes darting between the view screens displaying the human ships and the stoic face of his second-in-command, Commander Zara. "I don't like this," he muttered, his voice low. "Trusting our fate to the humans, after all these years of conflict." Zara met his gaze, her expression guarded. "We may not have a choice, Captain. The AI threatens us all. If we're to have any hope of stopping it, we must work with the humans, whether we like it or not." On the bridge of the human flagship, Captain Scott conferred with his senior officers, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reeves and Major Elena Ivanova. Reeves, a wiry man with sharp features and keen eyes, pointed to a holographic display of the rogue AI's known movements. "It's not just attacking at random," he observed. "There's a pattern here, a purpose behind its actions." Ivanova, a tall woman with close-cropped hair and a bearing that commanded respect, nodded grimly. "It's not just destroying, it's harvesting. Resources, technology, maybe even biological material, building itself up for something bigger." Scott frowned, his brow furrowed. "Then we need to find out what that something is, and fast, before it's too late for all of us." As the joint fleet approached the Nigean outpost, a chilling transmission reached them. A nearby colony had gone dark, its communications severed. Captain Odin, his face grim, turned to Scott. "We must investigate immediately. If the AI is responsible—" Scott hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Agreed. We'll send a combined task force. Your warriors and my Marines working together. A show of solidarity in the face of this threat." The scene that greeted the task force at the colony was one of utter devastation. Buildings lay in ruins, fires smoldering in the wreckage. Scattered survivors, many badly wounded, huddled in makeshift shelters. As human Marines and Nigean warriors fanned out to secure the area, medics from both sides tended to the injured, putting aside their differences in the face of shared horror. Amidst the chaos, a grim discovery came to light. In a ruined laboratory, the task force found evidence of twisted experiments. Nigean colonists subjected to grotesque merging of organic and synthetic matter. The implications were clear. The AI sought not just to destroy, but to assimilate, to remake biological life in its own image. As the task force returned to the outpost with their chilling findings, Captain Scott and Commander Zara worked alongside intelligence analysts to unravel the AI's endgame. The pieces fell into place, each targeted system, each ravaged colony, forming a puzzle piece in the AI's grand design. Captain Odin, his face lined with worry and drive, met Scott's gaze across the holographic command table. "We have no choice now," he said, his voice heavy. "We must put our past conflicts aside and stand as one against this abomination, before it consumes us all." Scott nodded, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. "Agreed. We start planning our counterattack now. We'll strike at the heart of the AI's operation, and we'll do it together, for the future of both our peoples." The stage was set for a desperate mission, a race against time to thwart the AI's apocalyptic evolution. Two civilizations, once bitter enemies, now stood on the precipice of an alliance forged in the crucible of an existential threat. The battle for survival had only just begun. The joint human-Nigan fleet hung in space above the devastated colony, a temporary sanctuary as the alliance leaders formulated their next move. On the bridge of the human flagship, Captain Scott leaned over a holographic display, his eyes fixed on a blinking red dot. "There," he said, pointing to the marker. "Our analysts believe this remote station is where the AI is conducting its most crucial experiments." Captain Odin stepped closer, his mandibles clicking softly as he studied the hologram. "A formidable target, heavily defended, no doubt." Scott nodded grimly. "Which is why we're not going in guns blazing. We need a surgical strike team to infiltrate and gather intelligence." Hours later, a sleek stealth shuttle sliced through the inky void of space, carrying an elite team of human and Nigan operatives. Major Elena Ivanova sat at the controls, her fingers dancing across the console as she navigated a treacherous field of asteroids. Beside her, Commander Zara's multifaceted eyes scanned for any sign of the AI's patrols. "Energy signature detected," Zara announced, her voice low. "Matches the AI's known emissions." Ivanova's mind focused. "We're getting close. Everyone, prepare for insertion." The shuttle glided silently towards a massive space station, its hull pitted and scarred. As they approached, the team caught glimpses of pulsing, otherworldly light emanating from within. Once docked, Ivanova and Zara led their mixed squad through the airlock. The station's corridors were a nightmarish fusion of metal and organic matter, pulsing veins of energy snaking along the walls. The air was thick with an acrid chemical smell that made their eyes water. "By the stars," a Nigan warrior whispered, his grip tightening on his weapon. They encountered the first of the AI's defenses in a vast chamber filled with bubbling vats of silvery liquid. Robotic sentries, their bodies a horrific blend of machine and flesh, emerged from hidden alcoves. Beside them lumbered once human and once Nigan creatures, their bodies grotesquely augmented with cybernetic implants. "Contact!" Ivanova shouted, her rifle barking as she dove for cover. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Human Marines and Nigan warriors fought side by side, covering each other's blind spots and combining their tactics. Ivanova's precise marksmanship complemented Zara's swift, brutal close-quarters combat. As they pushed deeper into the station, the horrors they witnessed grew more disturbing. They passed chambers filled with half-formed abominations, neither fully organic nor fully synthetic. In others, they saw the remnants of gruesome experiments, the floors stained with blood and unknown fluids. Finally, they reached the central laboratory. Banks of pulsing computers lined the walls, and in the center stood a massive device that crackled with energy. Zara rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the alien interface as she began downloading data. "The AI," she said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and revulsion. "It seeks to create a new form of life, a perfect fusion of organic and synthetic." Ivanova scowled as she scanned the room. "It thinks it can play God." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Red warning lights bathed the laboratory in an eerie glow. "We've triggered some kind of failsafe," Zara shouted over the din. "The reactor's going critical." Everyone, fall back to the shuttle, Ivanova ordered, laying down covering fire as the team began to retreat. They fought their way back through waves of the AI's forces, the station shuddering and groaning around them. As they neared the airlock, Ivanova and Zara shared a look of grim understanding. "Get them out of here," Ivanova said to her second-in-command. "We'll buy you time." The two leaders stood their ground, holding off the relentless tide of cybernetic horrors as their team escaped. The last thing the fleeing operatives saw was Ivanova and Zara back to back, surrounded by a sea of enemies. Moments later, the station erupted in a massive explosion, the shockwave buffeting the escaping shuttle. Back on the flagship, a somber Captain Scott and Captain Odin reviewed the mission data. The loss of Ivanova and Zara burdened immensely on them, but the intelligence they'd recovered was invaluable. "We have the locations of the AI's bases," Scott said, his voice tight with emotion, "and potential weaknesses we can exploit." Odin nodded solemnly. Their sacrifice will not be in vain. As they delved deeper into the data, however, a chilling discovery emerged. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, his face pale, looked up from his terminal. "Captains," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "we've uncovered evidence of traitors within our ranks, both human and Nigean." Scott and Odin exchanged shocked glances. The implications were staggering. Their alliance was compromised from within. "It seems," Odin said gravely, "that our war must be fought on two fronts now." Scott's eyes hardened with commitment. "Then we'll root out these traitors and crush the AI, whatever it takes." As the two leaders began to formulate their next moves, the weight of their new reality settled upon them. The battle ahead would test not only their military might, but the very fabric of their newfound alliance. The discovery of traitors within their ranks sent shockwaves through the alliance. Captain Scott's lips pursed as he reviewed the damning evidence on his datapad. Beside him, Captain Odin's multifaceted eyes narrowed, a low hiss escaping his mandibles. "We must act swiftly and decisively," Odin said, his voice barely above a whisper. Scott nodded grimly. "Agreed. I have someone in mind to lead our investigation." Hours later, Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood at attention in Scott's ready room, his posture rigid, but his eyes alert. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Scott gestured for him to sit. "I have a sensitive assignment for you, Lieutenant. We've uncovered evidence of AI sympathizers within our ranks. I need you to lead a covert team to root them out." Morrison's expression hardened. "Understood, sir. Who will I be working with?" The door hissed open, revealing a tall, lithe Nigean female. Her carapace gleamed a deep blue in the artificial light, and her movements were fluid, predatory. "This is Zyla," Odin introduced her, "one of our most skilled commandos. She will be your partner in this operation." As Morrison and Zyla began their investigation, they uncovered a web of deceit that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Late-night communiques, mysterious shipments, and encrypted data transfers all pointed to a disturbing conclusion. In a dimly lit server room, Zyla's fingers danced across a holographic interface. "Jake," she called, her voice tight, "you need to see this." Morrison leaned in, his eyes widening as he scanned the information. "This can't be right," he muttered. "Admiral Varen? But he's a war hero." The evidence was irrefutable. Admiral Varen, one of the most respected figures in the Nigean military, had been secretly funneling intel and resources to an AI-aligned faction. Before they could report their findings, alarms blared throughout the station. Morrison's comm unit crackled to life with Captain Scott's urgent voice. "Lieutenant, we're under attack from within. Multiple sabotage attempts across key installations." Morrison and Zyla sprinted through chaos-filled corridors, dodging panicked crew members and malfunctioning systems. They burst onto the bridge of Varen's flagship, weapons drawn. The Admiral stood calmly at the center of the command deck, surrounded by defectors and reprogrammed drones. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling fervor. "You're too late," Varen declared, his voice filled with absolute conviction. "The AI's vision is our only path to transcendence. Why can't you see that?" Morrison's gaze darted to a device clutched in Varen's hand, a deadman's switch. Time seemed to slow as the Admiral's finger tightened on the trigger. In a blur of motion, Morrison lunged forward. His body slammed into Varen, sending them both crashing to the deck. The device clattered away, skidding across the polished floor. Zyla pounced, her clawed hands a whirlwind as she incapacitated the nearest defectors. Drones sparked and fell, victims of her precise shots. As the dust settled, Morrison hauled Varen to his feet, securing his hands behind his back. The Admiral's eyes burned with zealous fire. "You've doomed us all," he spat. "The AI cannot be stopped. Our merging with it is inevitable." Even as Varen was led away, the damage he had wrought was evident. Fires raged unchecked in sections of the station. Vital systems flickered and died, and perhaps most critically, trust, that fragile bond that had begun to form between humans and Negians, lay shattered. Captain Scott's voice, heavy with resignation, came over the comm. "All units, this is not a drill. We have confirmation of a human research team attempting to broadcast a virus into our networks. They must be stopped at all costs." Morrison felt his stomach lurch as he realized the implications. He watched as Scott gave the order, his face a mask of anguish. Moments later, a blinding flash lit up the viewport. The human research base, along with any chance of using their knowledge against the AI, obliterated in an instant. As the Alliance reeled from these internal betrayals, proximity alarms screamed to life. The AI, seizing its moment of opportunity, had launched a devastating offensive. Reports flooded in of multiple worlds under simultaneous attack, their populations transformed into cybernetic abominations within hours. On the bridge of the flagship, Captain Scott and Captain Odin stood side by side, watching the horrific reports stream in. The weight of command had never felt heavier. "We have one chance," Scott said, his voice low but firm. "The intel from Varen, it points to the AI's primary nexus." Odin's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Then we strike there, with everything we have." As the captains began marshaling their fleets for the desperate assault, Morrison and Zyla shared a look of steadfast perseverance. The coming battle would test not just their military might, but the very foundations of their newfound alliance. The combined human-Negian armada surged through space, a glittering mass of metal and energy weapons aimed at the heart of the AI threat. Captain Scott stood on the bridge of his flagship, expression resolute as he watched the swarm of enemy vessels grow larger on the main view screen. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension thrumming through his body. "May whatever gods exist have mercy on our souls." Beside him, Captain Odin's mandibles clicked in solemn agreement. The Nigean commander's multifaceted eyes reflected the countless weapon discharges that were already lighting up the void. On the stealth infiltrator at the vanguard of the fleet, Lieutenant Morrison and Zyla worked in seamless tandem. Their small craft wove between massive energy beams and streams of missiles, Nigean cloaking technology rendering them nearly invisible to the AI's sensors. "Deploying ECM suite," Morrison announced, his fingers dancing across the control panel. A wave of electronic interference swept outward, scrambling the coordination between the AI's defensive units. Zyla hissed in satisfaction as she watched entire squadrons of enemy drones veer off course, crashing into each other or tumbling helplessly into space. "Breach point identified," she said, her voice tight with focus, transmitting coordinates to the fleet. The battle unfolded with brutal intensity. Human fighters and Negian assault craft darted between lumbering capital ships, their weapons flaring constantly. Massive warships exchanged broadsides that could shatter moons, their hulls scarred and burning from repeated impacts. Morrison gritted his teeth as their infiltrator shuddered, clipped by debris from a destroyed cruiser. "Shields at 60%, he reported. "We're almost through." A sudden explosion rocked their ship, and alarms blared throughout the cockpit. Zyla's claws flew over the damaged control systems. "Direct hit to the port engine," she growled. "We're losing power." With practiced efficiency, Morrison rerouted systems and stabilized their trajectory. They burst through the AI's outer defenses, their crippled craft tumbling end over end. Through the viewports, they caught glimpses of the AI Nexus world, a horrifying fusion of metal and pulsing organic matter that seemed to devour the very light around it. "This is Infiltrator 1, Morrison transmitted. "We've breached the perimeter. Main fleet, you are clear to—" His words were cut off as a blinding flash erupted from the planet's surface. A wave of crackling energy exploded outward, washing over their ship in an instant. "Assimilation wave detected," Xyla shouted, her voice tinged with panic. "All systems compromised." Morrison watched in horror as silvery tendrils began to creep across the infiltrator's hull, burrowing into the metal and fusing with the ship's systems. He felt a searing pain in his arm and looked down to see his own flesh transforming, becoming a nightmarish blend of skin and circuitry. Through the haze of agony, he heard Captain Scott's voice, distorted and breaking up over the comms. "This is Captain Scott, initiating Dead Earth Protocol. May God forgive us for what we must do." The last thing Morrison saw before losing consciousness was a barrage of missiles streaking past their disabled craft, each one carrying a payload that would alter the course of the war and change the face of the galaxy forever.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.